it was a fight that my dog could have promoted it. It was so easy, you know. I mean, they hated each other. There was the horrible atmosphere at press conferences, the disdain for both of them. Nigel was much more, you could see what he was thinking, and Eubank would revert to sort of trying to be the intelligentsia of the pair, you know, sometimes failing. But from a promotion point of view, it was a dream come true.
I'm here with Barry Hearn, legendary boxing promoter, darts supremo, snooker boss, and the man of many, many sporting promotional talents. Obviously, we're coming up to Chris Eubank Jr. against Conor Benn at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium on April the 26th. But a couple of decades ago, it was Barry Hearn and the dads involved in two absolute huge fights that were front and back pages of newspapers in the UK, on mainstream TV. It was absolutely huge. So I just thought we'd have you on, Barry, just to talk about your memories about those two fights and then a bit of a looking ahead to the Suns in action. So if I could take you back to 1990 and how did the first fight between Chris Eubank Sr. and Nigel Benn come about?
Well, I mean, most big fights happen because they have to happen. You know, it doesn't take a genius or a clever person to. You talk about fights. I think most good promoters are actually promoting fights they want to see themselves. That's the selfish part about it. And in 1990 at the NEC Arena with Eubank and Benn won, that was something that was on our agenda in the Eubank camp. For probably 18 months before it actually started. So if you go back, Eubank and I got together in 1988. I was at the World Snooker Championships, and probably the most famous ever snooker referee, Len Ganley, said, "There's a kid up here would like to meet you," and his name was Chris Eubank. I'd never met him before, though I'd obviously followed, as a fan, I follow most fighters in the early parts of their career, see who's going to be there. He was getting a little bit of notice, nothing extravagant. And we arranged to meet at the Grosvenor Hotel in Sheffield during the World Snooker Championships. And this amazing figure just sort of drifted into the room with all the swagger that you would expect. And, you know, I don't suppose he didn't have any money at the time, but he certainly had the style. And he just walked up to me and just said, I can remember it like yesterday. "My name is Christopher Livingston Eubank. I'm an athlete and I know my worth." They were his first words. I thought, I love this. This is the type of character I like. And we're all in the character business. We all have to have narrative for anything we do. Otherwise, we don't get noticed. And clearly there was a man that was going to get noticed. We struck it off pretty well. I gave him a 3-fight deal, paid him $2,000, $2,500, $3,000. He wanted £300 a week wages. I said, yes. And he said, but if I ever get beat, you don't have to pay me the £300. And I said, well, I like the look of you, young man. So let's make it, if you get beat twice, I don't have to pay you £300. We shook hands and we were away. But Nigel Benn's always been the ferocious character, always had much bigger headlines because of the way he fights. It's simple. You know, Nigel likes a tear up. Punters like a tear up. He's never in a bad fight. Eubank, different type of fighter, much more calculating, much more, principles of the art of the noble art. Not a come forward fighter, more of a counter puncher, more of a evasive rather than not take a punch. So different appeal. And certainly Nigel Benn was a much bigger name. He'd gone off, he'd done things, he'd fought some great fights. So it was, as Eubank's career started to move up a little bit, you have to look, where are we really going? Eubank had 3 rules, I don't fight southpaws. I don't fight people under 25. I don't fight unbeaten fighters. Well, Nigel ticked all those boxes and added the fact that he was a big name. And from a boxing point of view, I have to say that I never thought we had a problem with Nigel Benn. I think styles make fights. I'm not saying that Eubank was a better fighter or a worse fighter, but put those two together, and I thought Eubank wins the fight. And indeed he did. He won by stoppage, which surprised me. I thought he would win on points. But nonetheless, it was a fight that my dog could have promoted it. It was so easy, I mean, they hated each other. There was the horrible atmosphere at press conferences, the disdain for both of them. Nigel was much more, you could see what he was thinking, and Eubank would revert to sort of trying to be the intelligentsia of the pair, sometimes failing. But from a promotion point of view, it was a dream come true. And the fight sold out very quickly. It was a great fight. It was one of the greatest fights I've seen in a British ring between two great fighters. And we got the nod. I mean, it was a very important fight for me in my fledgling career, if you like. And it was a very important fight for Chris because it put him on the world map.
Before the fight, there was that iconic signing of the contracts on TV. Whose idea was that, and how did that kind of come?
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm always going to take full credit for every good idea. That's part of a promoter's dream. But ITV wanted it. We all recognised it was a big fight. Everyone understood quite early doors the hate between them was real. It wasn't invented. We can all throw a chair up in the air. We can all tip a table, but we can all smash an egg. But you can't take away reality. And the reality was that as soon as you walked in the room, these guys did not like each other. And that came across. And we wanted to capture the fight. We wanted to get it to the biggest audience. What better way than to have the signing on ITV? ITV were up for it. I was obviously in favour of it. I'm selling tickets, So, but it was a very unnerving atmosphere to be in a room. I've been in lots of, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of press conferences. I can't remember one which was basically nasty,
Yeah. Mm. When you got to fight night, then there was a few tricks played by Nigel. I know it was Bob Arum was promoting as well, but it was that maybe Ambrose Mendy who might have been the instigator.
Yeah, all Ambrose Mendy. It wasn't nothing to do with Bob Arum, but Bob was the manager of or the promoter of Nigel Benn. Ambrose was Ambrose. He's always a skullduggery little rascal, and Ambrose believes a lot of the games are played in your head. So they went out to upset Eubank without realising that that's not how Eubank's head works. It works with me because I especially in those days, you're talking 35 years ago, I was a little bit more lively than I am today, that's for sure. But they tried everything. They put us in a shitty little dressing room. They gave Eubank dirty towels because Eubank was fastidious about cleanliness, and right up to the night when the music, Simply the Best, our entry music that brought so much fame, just stopped halfway through, and I went crazy. And I always remember Eubank, I'm sad to say, I was frothing at the mouth. I basically wanted to kill everybody. This was our big night, and this was our music. And anyway, what happened, that's history. But I remember looking at Eubank, and he said to me very calmly, "Bazza, can you just calm down and let me go in there and spank this geezer?" And it was like ice. And I felt about 1.5 inches tall. And he went in there and did what he said. The only person it didn't upset was Eubank, because they didn't realise his thinking, he wasn't allowed that sort of thought process to go into his head. But everyone's different, I mean, that's the beauty of life, isn't it? There's personalities, and boxing, like everything else in life, is about personalities and character and things like that. So they messed around. They should have spent a bit more time working on Nigel's weight, because I think Nigel had a big weight problem building up to the fight. Probably built on complacency. I think they thought they didn't have a problem. And it was justified because I did the contract, obviously, and I paid Nigel Benn £300,000 and Eubank £100,000 because Nigel was the champion, deserved more. But I wouldn't give him any options. Now, we weren't the mandatory challenger, so there was no way that you'd get on one of my cards in those days without signing up futures, even if it was just a rematch. There was nothing in the contract at all. And I remember thinking the whole day while this mess was going on, sooner or later, someone's going to walk up to me and say, sign this or there's no fight.
Yeah.
We forgot the options. Sign them, there's no fight. Ambrose was busy playing his games, but we had no options.
Mm.
And it was great because I always, with all the atmosphere building up, okay, I just want to hear the bell for the first round.
Yeah.
And I sat there, and Nigel's entrance was fantastic, and Eubank was snarling. And I was sitting there thinking, please, no one pull a stroke on me now. And no one said a word. And I'm sitting next to Bob Arum. And as the seconds out, round one, ding, I turned around to Arum and said, you know you're fucked, don't you? And he went, what? I mean, we get on well. You know, we're two old geezers together, really.
Yeah.
What do you mean? What do you mean? I said, you got no options. And he said, no options, no options. And he looked at Ambrose and he said, haven't we got any options? And Ambrose said, we don't need options.
Yeah.
And Arum's face was like, he's a pro.
Yeah.
You don't. This is professional business, not just a fight. It's a business. So anyway, I said, you've got no chance of winning and you got no options. Enjoy the evening, boys. And it turned out, for once in my life, I actually got something right.
What was that feeling like then when he stopped him?
Oh, mate. As you say it to me now, I can feel like hairs standing up. I mean, the backstory for me was I was struggling in those days. I mean, this is 19, you know, I'd made a load of money in my life. I'd lost it all on boxing and snooker. I was a promoter without anything to promote, if you like. You know, there was no TV like there is today. I was struggling, big time struggling, but I'm proud and I'm a man. I kept that to myself. But frankly, all the marbles were on the table that night. And that puts its own pressure on you, which is probably why I got so agitated with the games. But Eubank delivered, you know, and it was a fair stoppage. Richard Steele was very good, you know, but hell of a fight. I mean, Eubank's tongue ended up split in the middle from an uppercut from. I remember during the interview with Gary Newborn, Eubank went, "Can I please go to hospital now? I have some attention required." But the whole thing was, you know, it's boys' own stuff for me. I mean, business obviously has been unbelievable for the last 30 or 40 years, and I've enjoyed every second of it. And, you know, I'm not a fight promoter like a lot of promoters, because I'm a sports promoter, not a fight promoter.
Yeah.
You know, and so I'm interested, and I am money orientated, and I am an accountant, you know, and I'm very proud of that. I run big, sustainable businesses that make money and make money for other people. So happy days. But at that time, the heart was on the sleeve, you know, and I was. So Eubank always says, I owe him one. And he's right. He was like, when Steve Davis won the World Snooker in 1981, I owe him massive. That started me off. When Eubank won in 1990, that was great. And I have to say, when Anthony Joshua beat Klitschko, there was another those type of evenings in my life. I'm not the same as everybody else. You know, I'm a sort of sporting nerd, really, but I have to win. I like to win everything. And I was never good at anything enough in sport to do that, but I ended up doing okay on the business side. Yeah. Today's world is slightly different. There's so much money in it. It's like, you know, we talk Eubank-Benn too. I paid Nigel $1 million and Eubank 900,000. I mean, and that was a massive fight. Manchester United, you know, 54,000 people, blah, blah. But today, in today's world, and I'm delighted to see the fighters getting this huge money. I'm even more delighted to think it's not coming out of my pocket. Because it's a huge amount of money.
Yeah.
You know? Sometimes even the fans, they talk about millions and tens of millions as if it's just normal. And it's like, no, put it on the table in Reddy's. It looks like a lot of money. And as I say, you've got to take advantage of the times. And boxers today are getting well looked after. And let's hope it continues for a long time.
The rematch, it took 3 years to make, and then they had Don King involved in it. And how did he start working with Nigel? Was it that he got involved in it?
Well, no, not really. I mean, we did a deal when I announced the Eubank-Benn 2. I was still taking quite a big punt for me, the calculating me. $1 million for him, 900. I didn't have a venue. I didn't have a TV contract. And Don phoned me just out of the blue and just said, I'm going to be your partner on Ben Eubank. I'm like, are you? What makes you think that? He said, because I'm going to give you $2 million for the overseas TV. Well, I had about 20,000 at the time. So I got the boys together. I said, what's the catch, Don? There's always a catch with Don King. So what's the catch? He says, there's no catch. I said, let's cut the crap. What are you after? He said, I want both of them. Win or lose, I want them both. Because I want to come to England. It's my next big dream to take over boxing in England. And like I do with every fight, I like to think I've always been honest with everybody because I don't really give a shit, There's no fun in cheating people. So I got both the guys individually. They wouldn't stay in the same room. And just said, look, this is a situation. Don King wants, win or lose, he wants you and he wants you. I'm not going to stop you because I've seen the numbers in the contract for fighting in America. I couldn't match them. So I just been honest with them and said, well, you do what you want to do. And they both really just said, look, you've done a great job for us. We're very happy, but there's another world in America and we'll go with King. And I said, that's fine. Yeah, we'll have our big hurrah. Manchester United's ground. We'll have a great day. We'll all make money. And, you're the one getting punched in the face. You do what's right for you. And that was great until, of course, the fight was a draw. And Mr. King didn't take too kindly to me reminding him that in front of the press as he was spouting off how he was going to be running boxing now. I said, well, why is that, Don? He said, well, you know my deal. I said, I know the deal. I wrote the contract. He said, well, I got both boxers. I said, not really. Read the contract. Win or lose, you got them both. I said, but to be fair, they're free agents as far I know. I'm an honest person. I said, they're free agents. You go where you want, boys. Eubank chose to go with me, and Nigel chose to go with King. That's fair enough. So that's probably the reason we didn't get number 3 out, because it was hard enough to get in number 2. It's very tough doing business with Don King. He does tend to like, 101 cents out of every dollar. And that's sometimes it's difficult to make it work. But I admire him as a pro, and he's done some amazing things in his life. But it's to my sadness that we never did Eubank-Benn 3, because that would have been the fight. That would have been my dream fight. Settle the scores, and that would have been the first pay-per-view show in the Great Britain, which would have done humongous business. But it never happened, and we've had to wait 30-odd years to see the next best thing. And the next best thing is the sons of the legends.
Yeah.
One of whom will become a legend in his own right. And that's the essence of boxing.
What do you think pay-per-view numbers that third fight between those would have done? I mean, what was the ITV figures back then?
ITV paid £1 million. Good money. But pay-per-view, again, when you're a promoter, you sometimes exaggerate a bit. So taper this down. But I think it might have done 2 million buys, because it was so big. Everybody in the world knew about it. Now, even if it was 1 million buys, it was a colossal fight, and in those days it was $19.99. Take your VAT off. You got £17.50 or whatever.
Yeah.
It's a lot of money. And if it had done the numbers, I think it would have been an absolute must. Well, what do I know? It never happened. One can only speculate. It would have been the biggest fight ever seen in the UK on pay-per-view. Such was the interest in the personalities and the narrative of the fight. And the fact that people are still talking about it like we are now, today, 10 days before their sons get in a ring, sold out Tottenham, with pay-per-view all around the world, and obviously DAZN being one of the broadcasters, and Sky are pay-per-view, and BT. These are modern days, and the Saudi support. You can't underestimate what they've done for boxing generally in terms of making fights happen. everyone always says, isn't it a shame fights didn't happen? All of these fights that you've ever dreamed of would have happened. It's only a question of how much. And the Saudis have cut out all the crap. And they just get you and say, I'm paying you this. There's no...
And it happens.
Well, it's going to happen. It's human nature. You know, how much for you to get in the ring with, or me to get in the ring with, I don't know, Alexander Usyk. Technically, probably the most gifted fighter for years and years and years.
Yeah.
We have a price. Stupidly, we have a price because we're going to get killed, you know. But that's boxing. It's a money game. And no worse or better than Premier League football with footballers getting £1 million a week and for kicking a football. These people are putting their life on the road, you know. I've never tired of trying to work it out why. And I've never come up with an answer. It's human nature and money. And the two things work very well together.